Jonathan Kuminga turned down a contract extension from the Golden State Warriors before the start of the 2024-25 season. We don't know the exact numbers, but numerous reports suggest it was around a 5-year, $150 million deal. Kuminga's agent said, via Anthony Slater of The Athletic, they weren't willing to go below $30 million in annual average salary, thus turning it down. Fast forward to the end of the season, Kuminga's counting stats regressed across the board, he fell out of Steve Kerr's rotation, and the team traded for and extended Jimmy Butler, a player of his exact archetype. So what's going to happen to him this offseason as he enters free agency? Is there a team out there who's willing to throw some cash at the 22-year-old prospect, or will he return to the Warriors and take what he can get in restricted free agency? Let's start off by looking at Jonathan Kuminga, the prospect. He's a 6', 8-inch, hyper-athletic forward who the Warriors picked 7th in the 2021 NBA draft. He was considered one of the more raw prospects in that draft. He went on to win a title with Golden State in his rookie season, but was a backup forward during the season and only played spot minutes in the postseason. Each season with the Warriors, the front office sang his praises. They told opposing teams he was untouchable in trades and saw him as the team's next core piece of the future. In fact, on the 7th of November 2024, Sam Amick from The Athletic reported that the LA Clippers would have traded Paul George to the Warriors if Kuminga was on the table. He wasn't, and Paul George ended up in Philadelphia. Kuminga had his best season in the 2023-24 season, starting in 46 games and averaging 16.1 points while shooting 53% from the floor. He was clearly a play finisher, getting most of his buckets in transition, off passes, and in mismatches, but he had some tantalizing flashes scoring with the ball in his hands. Unfortunately for Kuminga, Steve Kerr loves players who can pass the ball and make split-second reactions in his fluid offensive system. Kuminga is simply not that player. Even in these playoffs, when Steve Kerr had no choice but to put Kuminga in, looking for some offense as Steph Curry sits or is injured with his strained hamstring, you can tell he still hasn't figured out how to warp the defense with his drives. He's too happy to rest on his subpar jumper, and when he drives into the paint, defenders can sell out knowing that he's not going to find the open man. But it's not fully his fault. As I mentioned, he has struggled in Kerr's system, but he's also such a raw prospect. You might call him 2 years away from being 2 years away. He's clearly an NBA athlete. He has one of the most explosive first steps and verticals in the league, and his frame is ideal for NBA defenses. But he hasn't been given the opportunity to truly explore the studio space. His game reps have been inconsistent, and when Kerr has tried to win games, he subs in more reliable players, often veterans. And the Jimmy Butler trade was such cruel timing. He replaces everything that Kuminga does, and he's the veteran of all veterans right before he's about to hit his own free agency. On top of that, the Warriors needed a 3-and-D role player to step up, and it was Moses Moody, the player that Golden State drafted 14th in the exact same draft as Kuminga. Since the Butler trade, Moody stepped into that 5th starter role and he hasn't looked back until Steven Adams killed his confidence in the first round, but let's not worry about that. But here's a comparison that I just know is going to infuriate a lot of people, especially some in my own NBA group chat, but just bear with me for a second. Anthony Edwards was also an athletic go-to scoring prospect. Thank you for not turning the YouTube video off right now. In Minnesota, he was quickly given the keys to the offense and the team went through the growing pains with him, and it has led them to where we are today. Similarly to Kuminga, Ant struggled with releasing the pressure his explosive drives created. This came to a head in the 2024 playoffs against the Dallas Mavericks, where they just created it on his drives and forced him to make a pass that he just couldn't make yet. These playoffs, JJ Redick threw multiple different looks and defenders at him, and he adjusted accordingly and fast enough for the Minnesota Timberwolves to win in 5 games. No, there's no guarantee that Kuminga turns into an all-NBA scorer like Ant, and for every Ant who gets the keys and drives away, there's a Rui Hachimura type who loses his draft shine and gets traded for a bag of peanuts, but at least you get an answer. The Warriors had 4 years to get off the pot and stop shooting, and they simply didn't. They had 4 years to either see what JK could do in a bigger role or trade him while he still had some value, and they did. And it's not like there weren't any suitors. On the 25th of October 2024, the Philadelphia 76ers and Brooklyn Nets had interest in the forward, according to Jake Fisher from Bleacher Report. But the trade deadline came and went, and JK remained on the team. Which takes us to where we are today. Jonathan Kuminga is a restricted free agent, and it's 100% clear that he's not getting the $30 million a season that he wanted. He's probably not sniffing what the Warriors had on the table last offseason as well, so what's he getting? Well, it looks like he'll need to find an offer from another team if he wants to make money or at least draw some more money out out of the Warriors. Let's start with the teams with cap space. The Detroit Pistons can create up to $25 million in cap space this offseason, but the last thing they need is another shaky shooting project, especially if they want to build on this season's playoff berth. The Brooklyn Nets can open up max cap space this offseason, and they've had reported interest in Kuminga before. If there's a team out there that is to fall in love with Jonathan Kuminga and raise his financial prospects, it is the Brooklyn Nets. But Sean Marks told media that he's not expecting a long, slow rebuild this offseason. The Brooklyn Nets traded back for their own picks from the Houston Rockets, but they reportedly have their eyes set on Giannis Antetokounmpo. Good luck on that. And will be drafting their own high-level prospect in this year's draft. It's a lot easier to bet on your own draft guy when they're about to enter 4 years at a cost-controlled, smaller level than hope that Jonathan Kuminga can become someone he hasn't for 4 years and be paid like he is. I doubt the Nets will be the ones to raise JK's value unless they've been secretly in love with his talent. Even so, they'd be better off waiting until he meets a flat market before trying to sign him. That takes me to the non-taxpayer mid-level exception teams. This offseason, the MLE is set at $14.1 million. It's kind of wild to think about how much the cap has grown in recent years, but that number is just under half of what Jonathan Kuminga's party was looking for in this past offseason, but it might just have to do. Some of the teams who will have access to this MLE and who might be interested in his services are the Chicago Bulls. I mean, he'll be a perfect fit next to Pat Williams as a what could have been guy. The Memphis Grizzlies, they do actually need a guy who can guard small forwards. I just don't know if Kuminga is that guy. The Houston Rockets, but I guess if you thought he didn't have enough development time in Golden State, just ask Reed Shepherd or Cam Whitmore what it's like in Houston. The Utah Jazz, assuming John Collins picks up his $30 million player option, which he almost definitely will, the Utah Jazz might throw their MLE at a second draft guy like Kuminga, and depending on who they draft, it could be a really crowded front court next to insert highly drafted forward here, Cody Williams and Larry Markkinen, so they might have their own prospects in the front court before actually throwing some money at an external one. And while talking about the teams drafting atop the board, the Washington Wizards and Charlotte Hornets might look at him as a prospect worth looking at, again as a second draft guy, but they probably don't want to commit long-term money to him, which sounds a lot like the rest of the league. And from Jonathan Kuminga's point of view, he's probably not too keen on locking himself up to a long-term deal at this offseason's MLE as well. His most likely contract, I would say, is a 2-year deal at the MLE with one of these teams that falls in love with him. The second year, I assume, would be a player option, so when he underperforms in his first season, he can make sure he's not on a minimum the following year. Hold on, did I say the quiet bit aloud? And if you're Golden State, you're likely hard capped this offseason, but definitely over the tax line. So since JK is restricted, the Warriors will have the ability to match this new contract and then make moves to accommodate their contract, but is the juice really worth the squeeze? It'd be nice if you can get something back in return for Jonathan Kuminga, make it into a sign and trade, but with their big three being Draymond, Steph and Jimmy making a combined $138 million next season, they're better off focusing on surrounding role players, not a guy who seriously looks like the human embodiment of Bruno Caboclo's ceiling. The final avenue Kuminga could take is signing his qualifying offer, but that is a very slippery slope and it would be a high-risk option for him if, as we assume, the Warriors focus on the current core. So where are we after all that? Honestly, in a very difficult space. It's not entirely Kuminga's fault for underperforming in such high-pressure situations, but you rarely see a player who can legitimately make it in the NBA go undiscovered, especially with 4 years of getting rotation minutes. If another team, like the Brooklyn Nets, for example, see something that the Warriors don't, then we're just about to see what Jonathan Kuminga can do. Maybe all he's needed is 30 minutes on a bad team with consistent touches, and that will unlock whatever he can be, but he's been in a winning situation for 4 years, playing definitely less than 30 minutes and also getting a really short leash if he makes a defensive lapse. But I just think we would have seen something by now. And if we've seen what he can do, his role will drastically change and we'll all be writing articles in a couple of years reevaluating the fateful D'Angelo Russell trade that saw a title contending Golden State team get the 7th pick in the first place. And maybe it was Golden State's fault for not developing him properly, or maybe it was Jonathan Kuminga's fault for not fitting into the Golden State Warriors, but we're about to find out very soon which one it is. Thank you very much for watching this episode of The Film Room. If you've made it this far, thank you very much. If you want to support the channel, best things you can do, I'm sure you've all watched YouTube videos before, is to like, comment and subscribe. It feels a little bit cringe to be saying that, but it helps us a lot. Also, it really goes a long way in boosting our endorphins. Outside of that, we do most of our content on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. As you know, probably, we have a regular podcast as well as the film room. But the other thing you can do is follow us on Instagram. That's where we're very active sharing, but sometimes we're leaking the group chat. We're sharing funny graphics. I made a graphic the other day that says Ime Udoka is a fuckwit. That's quite funny. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Check us out on Instagram, and thank you for watching this episode.